And we're live.
All right. Welcome to the Music for Humans podcast. My name is Louis Rasco. I am the founder of Music for Humans. And today my guest is the guitarist, songwriter, and music producer, Matt Hogan.
Hello.
Matt, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks
How
for
you
having
doing?
me. This is awesome.
Matt, you have a pretty impressive career. You've performed with many superstars, got to travel all around the world. I would love to hear how it all got started for you.
Yeah, well, thanks. And again, thanks for having me on. Yeah, just been a musician my whole life, probably like most people started, young, started at a young age and just, kept playing, loved music, um, and pretty much had that kind of, I'm from New York City, currently live here, but I grew up on Long Island. So I grew up in the suburbs, about an hour outside of Manhattan. And,
Okay.
And basically, I just, the way I kind of started my career was after college, after graduating from going to school upstate New York for music. I came down here into Manhattan and just started playing all around, meeting tons of musicians and getting to know people. And, you start playing with so and so, and then, they move on and you go get to play with them and you just start becoming friends and it's you're having a blast doing it you know
Definitely.
S-
Music, it's like a family, right? Like you
yeah,
meet so many people and
yeah, completely. And I think that was always the coolest part about it. And I think that's how a lot of people, like, you hear about these musicians who are like, oh, they played in this band or this artist. And the truth is, if you really studied the timeline of these musicians, they were friends with so and so, and that person was in a
yeah,
band. And then maybe a year later, you end up joining that band or that artist because you were friends with them. And it's very natural at that point. It's very organic, you know? and
true.
and
Yeah.
uh, and that's really what started it. That was really kind of it. But it was, at first before I, took the plunge and moved into Manhattan. Been here for a while now, but I was constantly back and forth, just hustling from audition to audition and gigs and rehearsals, and everything was in Manhattan. But I was, after college, I still lived on Long Island. I lived in a few towns other than the town that I was raised in. But and so it got to be so tough that way.
And then what have you been working on lately? You did the pandemic affect a lot like your work and what you've been doing, your projects, all that.
Yeah, I mean, it did in right before the pandemic. I kind of took a little break. I've been touring and on the road for so much, playing with a lot of artists, but playing with one artist in particular for years. And so I needed to take a little time off to establish more like lessons and more teaching and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, and I actually I took a lot of, like we all did, but one of the things I got fortunate with is for many years I would work with jingle artists and people that
Okay.
make music for commercials. It was, when I first started getting involved in it, um, there used to be in New York City, because New York City was really well known for the jingle world, and so many. I mean, we're going back, decades and stuff. It was obviously in Los
Yeah.
Angeles, and it's in all the music cities, but so many television and commercials were, the musician and the music was done here in Manhattan. And so what they would have is what they call jingle houses. And
Oh, nice.
basically, they were buildings in Manhattan, and it would be all sorts of producers, similar to like what we're doing in a way now in a room like this, producing. And then the ad agency would come in and they'd get, okay, we need something for GMC trucks, or we're doing something for
Yeah.
whatever. So anyway, that kind of went away, and a lot of it because technology and everyone was able to work remotely. So
Yeah.
that field in the music business started remotely for years, years before the pandemic. And so these are people I used to work with, people out in Los Angeles, a good dear buddy of mine who doesn't live far outside of Manhattan. Um, a few of those jobs came back during the pandemic, so we started getting back and doing commercials and So anyway, I was
Oh,
fortunate
that's
for
great.
that because that
Yeah,
kind of came in, and
definitely.
it's interesting how talking to all these people, because again, these are all people that I worked with in Manhattan, but now everyone lives everywhere. So that was really, I was real fortunate to be doing some of that stuff. And then
Definitely.
just like everybody else, I guess, just really concentrating and getting hooked up with Music for Humans
Yeah.
getting started on the journey of teaching. Teaching has been something like many musicians that I've been doing all throughout my career. I mean, since more, I mean, actually, I first started teaching at 16. I think I was. I had
Wow,
a few
nice.
students when I was a senior in high school. I had a few who were like freshmen.
Yep. Yeah,
And
same. Yeah.
same
I
with you,
started
right?
teaching around like yeah, when I was like 17, 18, I started
Right.
teaching.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so. It's something that I've always loved, but it got to one point where I was just like, okay, I needed a break from it, and I needed to spend time touring and all that stuff. And actually,
Performing.
the
Yeah.
first time I remember doing a show, and I'm trying to think, I remember it because it was the first time I never thought about remote teaching and remote learning. I was doing a show in England, and man came up to me and really liked my playing, and he's like, oh, oh, I saw online that you give lessons. He saw on the website, but like, it was for local, it was for here, or I never thought of it. He goes, and he's like, I wish I can get a lesson from you. I'm like, oh yeah, too bad, kind of thing. And he's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And he's like, and that was the first time. This was years ago, and I was like, I never thought of using something like Skype at the time, or,
Yeah.
or and I really was like blown away by that. I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, why not? You know. Anyway, that was like I
Yeah, now
remember
you
my
can
first
it goes
time
super
hearing it.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing. I felt well, I was gonna ask you if when you were on tour, did you feel like on tour you put everything else on hold, like let's say every aspect of your musician career, like producing and also well, you can do a little bit of producing, but teaching and also all the contacts and building like, this your little community that will call you back and
Hmm.
like rely on you for certain gigs or recording certain
Right.
things that when you're on tour, everyone kind of forgets about you. And when you come back and stop touring, you kind of have to start all this over, all over again.
Right. Well, that has always been, the biggest, how should I say, like, the biggest concern with any musician before he takes and agrees to go on tour.
Yeah.
That's why you would hear for so many years. And again, this, going back, I think the answer to that really is in today with technology. I mean, it's completely, possible for sure. I mean, everyone's so
Yeah.
connected. Again, when I was thinking, I remember, so after, having that epiphany that I could teach online, um, I started trying to do it, and I was, and then I was on the road, and I tried it a few times in hotel rooms, and I mean, think about everything, how much everything's gotten better. I remember, Wi-Fi password was like, what? You'd be in a nice hotel, but it really wasn't there. Or, I mean,
Yeah.
the iPad was out. I remember I had gotten like the second generation iPad, and that was good, but still, that was, it was Skype, and, you were so. I think with technology now, it's so much easier. But again, even going back in the day,
Yeah.
you would hear that was always the big decision for studio musicians. Excuse me. You would hear about like the famous studio Nashville guys and all that, and they wouldn't want to go on tour because they were working so much in town. Same with Los
Yeah,
Angeles and
exactly.
anywhere. So
Yeah, it's
they would play on a
that.
big artist
Sorry.
record, and then that artist would be like, come on the road, and they'd be like, eh. you know.
Not sure if
Yeah,
I
not
want to go
sure.
on
Like,
that. Yeah,
you would
yeah,
have to hear about like whether it was, obviously something because of that fear, because you would go on tour and then people would be like, oh, you're on tour. What a lot of guys did, and I used to do it too, was you would just start calling everybody almost like I'm home, whether they had
yeah,
any work for you or not, you didn't, but social media, you can let people know. I mean, if they follow you on social media, they know they watched, depending on how much social media you do. I mean, they could have known what you've had for breakfast every day on the tour,
yeah. True.
and so they know you're coming home because you mentioned it 20 times. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I've always been kind of lazy on social media when I was on tour. Like at first, I was always kind of proud to show everything I was doing. Like
Mhm.
for let's say the first like 2 3 months I left on tour, and then after this, I just entirely stopped posting anything. So
Right.
I kind of felt like when I came back to when I was coming back to Montreal that I was like if I had disappeared, and people would be like, "Hey, what have you been doing? Where are you? What's going on with
Right.
you?" And
Right. No, you're right, 100%. I'm guilty with social media. Like I always say, I'm going to get better at it. I post in there, but funny enough, it's like I would on tour, I'd be taking pictures and doing all this stuff. And then when it got time for it, I'd get back to the hotel room or wherever. I don't want to play on my phone, you
yeah,
know? And
exactly.
I'm like, you know what? Because maybe I was on the phone or was doing this, or I would film all the content or take pictures of funny stuff, but I just didn't have the take the picture and go right away to post it. I would just put it on my phone, take the picture. And then I'd come
Yeah,
home and then I forget about it. Then the next day and so, it's just so.
yeah,
But
same
some
here.
people are so good at, like, they would, take the picture and post it right away and not, I don't
Yeah,
know.
you need actually to be kind of talented at, well, not kind of. It's like it's a special skill to have. Like
I agree. Yeah.
we just did a partnership with this young drummer Alexa. She's from San Diego, and she's really good on social media. She have like a lot of followers, and
Wow.
she make drums video. And now we just partnered with her. She make like short drum lessons on social media
Oh, that's awesome.
for free to offer, like basically everyone can learn like some basic beats and songs with her on
Yeah,
social media.
that's great.
And she really has like the, I don't know, you need like this kind of energy and
Yeah.
charisma to show off the skills and all this. And her we were talking about making some partnership with other musicians, and they were asking me, hey, you could play something in a video, and I was like, I don't know, like it's not my thing.
Right, right. Well, it's funny you say that. Yeah. So, again, like, so the one of the things I was doing during the pandemic was on top of always recording and stuff. I started really getting good at learning video editing. Because here I
Oh,
was,
nice.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm on my computer, and we had all this time, and I've always had Final Cut Pro. You know how sometimes when you
yeah,
buy the computers, it came with Logic, and it came, or you paid extra and it came with it. And so I'm like, here's a perfect thing to do during these crazy times. I'm gonna, and so I started making short, and I always stress the word short because in this day and age, no
yeah,
one wants to hear
yeah.
more than like 2 minutes of anybody. Even the greatest musician in the world, I can't even sit through more than 2.5 minutes of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've been posting a few videos like that same kind of idea
that's
I was
awesome.
telling you. We had a couple different people, so we did another partnership with this group of musicians from Europe. They're called Piano Worldwide, and they have musicians that play a little bit every instrument,
Oh,
and
that's
they've been
fantastic.
creating like very short. Again, like we were talking about
Yeah,
short, but like super
yeah.
short lessons for like piano, classical guitar, violin. They are really more like a classical music,
Oh,
so
that's
it's
amazing.
it's
That's
interesting. We're kind
amazing.
of like mixing up everything.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think again, like that's to me, that's the most amazing thing is just being able to, be able to get these amazing little snippets of awesome information, and to
Yeah,
be able to get like a
exactly.
quick tip, you would see those, like the the quick tips.
You in your career, you've been doing a lot of mix between like touring and studio work. Do you have like a preference? And then what would be like the biggest challenge of both?
Yeah, um, the biggest, I think the biggest challenge of both. I really do. I enjoy both. I'm very balanced as a person. I can't do much of one thing all the time. Like I need to
Yeah.
be a steady stream of I'm going on the road for a little bit. I'm going to be home doing recording or whatnot. Um, but the biggest challenge I think with touring is probably the traveling.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing about touring as a musician is how you are as a person and dealing with personalities.
Oh,
Because
yes.
that's, as
Yes.
you know, right? And you
Yeah.
know what? You've probably heard it too. I've heard many artists tell me that they've had some of the, best musicians in the world they wanted in their bands. And after 2 weeks of touring, they never wanted to ever have see that person again because that
Yeah.
person just could not deal because you're living with people, you know.
Mhm.
Even if you're, let's say, playing a headlining tour, let's say the most you're going to play is 2 hours a night, right? That would be,
Yeah.
say if you're playing with a big headline. If not, you're doing an opening act and you're playing for a half hour. That at that 2 hours, there's 22 other hours in the day that you have to deal with that, right? So
Yeah. Like
I think that's the big
rehearsals
thing.
and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. You,
And
you totally know.
yeah, and also like whenever you get to perform, there's always things at the end of the show. You're like, okay, this could have been better, this could have been
Yeah.
better, and then you have to have like those constructive, like productive conversation
Yeah.
that are not always necessarily super nice. Like it's not like if you screwed up something and then the
Yeah.
singer tells you like, hey, you were out of tune here, or you did this wrong,
Right.
or like
Right.
if it's the guitarist or the drummer that tells you you were offbeat or something like
Right.
this, you need to be able to take this like in a constructive way and then
Yeah.
get better the next day. You
Yeah.
cannot just be like, oh, I cannot believe you told this to me, like, and
Right.
then get
Right.
upset and all
100%.
this.
Yeah. You have to maintain that professionalism. But again, it's
Yeah,
and which is easier to do when you're not on the tour and seeing this person day in and day out,
exactly. Yeah,
Right? So yeah, it's
yes.
easier to do that if you don't see them every time and you can, and you're gonna go home to your own, bed that night and see your own people.
Yeah, you can just vent, call your
Yeah.
friends, say something,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
go have a beer with some friends and talk about it,
Yeah, yeah,
laugh
yeah.
about it,
Whereas
and then the
you don't
next day
have
you're
that on the
good.
road. The
No, yeah,
so yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And the biggest challenge I think for studio is the timing and how quick can you be and again, if you're not sheet reading music and it's already written, how fast you can come up with ideas that people are going to be throwing at you, how good you can perform it and execute it so it doesn't take that. It's all about how fast can you do it, how great can you do it, and how fast. It's
yeah.
that
And
mentality.
under
It's a lot of
pressure,
pressure that way.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
And because, but these, but again, that's almost coming to the point where times are changing with that. I mean, at least here, the studio scene in Manhattan, it's it's a tragedy. There was so many amazing studios are gone here. Some of the most
yeah.
iconic records of all time were recorded in recording studios here, so they're gone. A lot of them, for every reason you can think of. But that was always the biggest thing. They were so expensive that when you were hired to go into a studio to record, time was money, and
Oh yeah.
we only have X amount of time to get X amount done. And they would want to cram it in, and a lot of times they would be like, oh, we got 2 days in the studio. We're going to record 7 songs. It's like,
Dang, yeah,
you
you
can
have to be
technically
really
record
good.
7 songs. Are you going to finish 7 songs track? No, I don't think so. But,
Yeah,
but the beautiful part about it now is I think, with technology. So now even if I'm going into a session like that, it took me a while to get producers to trust me to work with me enough that they can trust the tracks I'm going to do. But now I can fly things in remotely, you know.
Yeah,
And I've
that
done
too.
that on
That's pretty
several
cool.
records in the past few years where I would get whatever the rough would be. I'd record everything here, and then take that everything I did, and if the producer and the artist wanted to modify it in any way, then we'd go into a studio. But everything would kind of been laid out and done. You're not building things, so it's way
Yeah.
more enjoyable.
Is there like a particular artist that you performed with live that you will remember forever?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely gigs of playing with certain artists that I can like say, wow, that was an amazing moment, even if it was one time playing with that artist, on stage or whatever. Um, you know, there's always that, and then there's just that feeling of uh, really looking back, like the situations. I'm proud to say the great thing is, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't ever change, but everybody I played with, I could say I'm a friend, and we're
Yeah.
friendly. Um, and yeah, even if some of them I haven't touched base with in a while, but that happens to everybody's normal relationship. But,
Yeah, no, for sure.
but it's
Yeah.
great to know that. And I think that was the most important thing, that you can all sit there and go, I have so many great memories of being on stage. They so outnumber any of the bad, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And even if
Yeah,
I had a
for sure.
bad show or a bad thing, I never had a thing where I was playing with a bad artist, let's say, where everything
Yeah,
was bad. It was like we had a bad night, or it was a bad tour, or
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the good always outweighed the bad.
yeah, yeah,
Like we were also talking, it's not only about being the best player, it's about so much more than this to be a
yeah,
musician. So
yeah.
you you have to work on your personality, on your contacts, on making friends,
Right.
on like being at the right place at the right time. It's yeah, it's
Yeah.
not just about
No, it's 100. Yeah,
performance.
it's really it's and it's and that's the one thing that's hard. You really learn that after school, or at least after music. Like that it's not enough to just practice 9 hours a day. It helps. It's
Exactly.
great, but it's got
Yeah.
again, like an artist who's gonna pay you potentially for years, and you're making a living. It's like they don't care that you can do that. They care about how well you could play their song, and how much you want to play with their song.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
your personality, it's such an important part of the
yeah,
deal too. And
and I one of the
stage presence.
yeah, all that, yeah. But again, I really feel it has to come from a sincerity inside you. Your
Yeah.
stage presence
Yeah.
comes out because, man, you love doing you. There's something about it. And again, everyone, there are certain things you could love an artist, all the music, a few songs you're not a fan of, but I mean that's anything. There's no artist that you've ever that you could say I'm a fan of everything they do. You
No,
know.
definitely.
But if the
Yeah.
majority of it, the best advice that I heard in kind of recent times, and it's so true, even in regards, and I think about it every time I watch anything, because I know, like you said, you watch YouTube and you can get inundated with just amazingness. The only person you should ever compete with is yourself,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and by saying that, and I recommend anybody doing this, do that. Say that to yourself when you watch a video of somebody who's just amazing. Say, I only like, because you don't want to ever think, and watch yourself get influenced, as opposed to, and you'll find something
Yes.
that they're doing that's influencing you to do something, just by almost even saying that, you know?
Yeah, well, actually, that's exactly what I've been doing. Like when I was in college, I would surround myself with like all the best musicians,
Yeah,
like that were like a lot better than me. But I just wanted to learn from them. I was like, how can I play
yeah,
like you? Like what do I do wrong? Just tell me. I don't,
yeah.
I won't be sad if you tell me my playing is not good. Like
Right,
that's what I want to hear. I want to hear how I can get better.
right, right. No, 100%. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great, man. Great talking with you, man.
Yeah, you too. This is really exciting, and this is really cool, and I'm
Yeah,
glad to be sitting
it's
here
been
and
amazing.